Disruption. Hello everyone, I am Vansh Tyagi. I welcome you to the structured series on Model United Nations, which has been titled as MUN Simplified with Vansh Tyagi. Let me begin with a very basic question for all learners and future delegates watching this today. Why do some students who excel in debates struggle in Model United Nations, while others with limited debating experience perform exceptionally well? The answer lies in a very fundamental misunderstanding. MUN, debate, and parliament. They're structurally and philosophically different formats, but we consider them as similar. Today we will analyze this particular thing, that what are the differences among these three pointers of Model United Nations, debate, and parliament. Why does this particular question even arise? Why do we need the distinction, right? At surface level, all these three formats involve public speaking, rules of procedure, argumentation, decision making. So when we cater around that all the objectives, methods, and outcomes of each format are very similar to each other, this makes us distinguish among all of these. That what exactly is Model United Nations, what exactly is debate, what exactly is parliament. All of these have some of the other zones which are correlated, and that is where the question arises. Understanding this distinction is not theoretical, it directly affects how you speak, negotiate, and succeed in MUN. Let's just take an example. If we are not even known that what is a nation and what is a state, both of them are different. Maybe you might not be knowing that a nation is not very similar to what is exactly a state. If you aren't known about these, you cannot talk about these. In the very similar manner, if we consider these three topics to be equal to each other, we would be somewhere or the other, theoretically or conceptually, a bit on the back end than the people who know the difference. So let's first of all cater the first point, that is, what exactly is debate competition? So when we consider about debates, debate is basically a structured form of competitive reasoning, right? So it provides someone or the other, all the participants, with competitive reasoning. In debates, participants are basically divided into two opposite sides. And the primary objective of any debate is to prove the opposing argument incorrect. We do not take in different senses that what we are speaking in arguments. We need to speak in arguments that the other person, the opponent, is wrong, is incorrect. We need to prove that. That is our primary objective in a debate. Logical rebuttals and persuasive delivery are rewarded. Basically, if you ask good questions, if you ask good objections on the other person's delivery, so you are rewarded for that. The format produces a clear winner and loser. So into any debate, it is always very competitive in nature, that there would be a clear winner or a loser in any particular debates. It's never something which is gray. It's always a white and a black. To the other extent, debates basically train students to think quickly. They challenge their assumptions and defend positions rigorously. Skills, which are highly valued in law and competitive reasoning environments. This is something which comes out as a factor. What and in what senses debate helps us, right? So if I term it out, so debate is basically inherently adversarial at some pointers, that it is more into competitive spirit. Coming to the other point, that is about parliament. Parliament speaks about domestic governance. See, debate and parliament are two different aspects, but sometimes we consider them to be very similar to each other. But parliamentary systems basically work on national decision making levels. And in basic parliamentary formats, representatives speak for political parties or constituencies. In a few of the basic debates, the general debates, the person speaks as themselves. But in a parliamentary format of debates, and even in the parliamentary formats of these youth parliaments which are conducted, representatives basically speak for political parties or constituencies. Decisions in parliaments are centered towards domestic laws, budgets, and policies. Right? So the discussion in parliaments cannot go about something very vague, right? Although in debates it can be about anything or I can say everything. Right. So coming to the other aspect about parliament is outcomes are basically determined by majority voting. On the other hand, when we go towards the debates part, it is very different over there. There's no voting involved. Then, about political power and alignment, they are the basic central roles which play a very good perception when we discuss about parliament. So basically, parliamentary simulations are one which teaches us legislative thinking and policy formulation, but the scope in here remains within a single nation state, right? So this is very different from what we did into the debates, right? There was clearly a winner and a loser over there, but not in here. Parliament is a place where people sit together to discuss things about their nation, right? It is more about deliberation. On the other hand, model United Nations has very much of these both these particular factors. But the basic difference among these is that debates are not model United Nations. Model United Nations has some parts of debate, but a model United Nations is not only debates, because debates have that sense of competitiveness only, while MUNs are more solution oriented, right? And MUN is different from parliament because parliament is for the national perspectives. On the other hand, model United Nations, its name suggests it came up from the United Nations, right? We have already gone through the history of model United Nations. So it is basically on the basis of international diplomacy, right? In basic model United Nations, you represent the official position of a country or institution on global aspect. You speak based on national interest and not your personal belief, right? The other angle is the objective in here at Model United Nations is consensus building rather than argumentative victory, right? We perform things which are diplomatic in term and will provide us, consensus towards any factor. Herein, cooperation negotiation are two factors which we do not learn in debates, right? Cooperation and negotiation are two factors which we learn only in Model United Nations. Right. So there are no winners in diplomacy, only agreements that multiple actors are willing to accept. There's no winner and a loser theory in Model United Nations. So this is the basic difference which we consider in any Model United Nations and debates and parliaments, of course. And let's just take an example. If we do have a single issue, which is climate change, in debates, the focus will be on disapproving the opposing stance. A will oppose B, B will oppose A. In Parliament, the discussion centers on national legislation and domestic impact, right? So they'll not be considering anything about the global aspects, but they'll consider it on the basis of the nation which they are a part of. Likely, if we are a part of India, so we will consider the climate changes of India when we are sitting in the Parliament. On the other hand, in Model United Nations, the challenge is to reconcile the priorities of developed and developing countries all together, means across the globe, into a shared international framework. So you have to examine all these issues of climate change on global aspect. So the same issue is there, but there are three formats, three completely different intellectual approaches which are followed. So this is the basic, mindset which we need to take upon into senses when we are, considering anything related to MUNs in and debates and parliaments. On the other hand, one of the most frequent mistakes students make is applying a debate mindset in an MUN committee which is excessive aggression. They come up with so much of aggression. They'll do different interruptions, and the focus is always on winning. And that is where one person who is winning a special mention does not go towards winning a best delegate. So that's the core difference between these three different segments: debate, and your model United Nations, and the parliament. So that's it for this particular video today. In the next video, we would be catering that how an MUN conference actually functions from start to finish, what exactly happens at an MUN conference. So that's it. Thank you.